Greetings, everyone. I am Abiyo Gomes, and I warmly welcome you to Group 4's presentation of the importance of culture in change management, presented by myself, Kazia Francois, Zandria Ramdan, Shikwana Augustine, and Ria Warikan. This presentation examines why understanding culture is essential in managing organizational change. Using Hofstede's 6 cultural dimensions, we will explore how cultural values shape employee behavior, influence communication, and impact the success or failure of change initiatives. Without cultural awareness, even the best change strategies can fail. I hope you enjoy this very informative presentation.
For this assignment, we have 3 objectives: to define and provide background on culture and change management, 2. to provide background and define Hofstede's cultural dimensions, and 3. to identify importance of culture using individualism versus collectivism, masculinity versus femininity, power distance, indulgence versus restraint, and uncertainty avoidance.
Now, one might wonder, what is culture and what is change, and how do these two words relate or become intertwined? So, according to Robinson et al. 2022, culture is the shared values, beliefs, and customs of a group of people. Change management is defined by Klein et al. 2021 as the structured approach to guiding organizations through transitions to a desired future state. Therefore, bringing these two factors together, Phillips and Klein 2022 emphasized that culture is the foundation of any successful change in an organization.
Hofstede's cultural dimensions offer a way to understand how people's values influence their behavior in different cultures, workplaces, and organizations. The 6 dimensions are power distance, which looks at how comfortable people are with unequal power or authority. We have individualism versus collectivism, which considers whether people prioritize individual goals or group loyalty. Then we have masculinity versus femininity, which explores whether a culture values competition and success or caring and quality of life. There is uncertainty avoidance about how people handle change, uncertainty or risk. We then have long term versus short term orientation, which considers whether a culture is more focused on future planning or on tradition and quick results. And but not least, we have indulgence versus restraint, which looks at how freely people allow themselves to enjoy life or whether they tend to hold back. This dimension helps us better understand how people work, communicate, and make decisions in different cultural settings. I will be discussing individualism versus collectivism. Gus Hofstede's individualism versus collectivism dimension explores how societies prioritize the role of the individual versus the group. Individualism focuses on personal independence, self direction, and the importance of individual success, where people are more likely to value direct communication and personal goals. On the other hand, collectivism focuses on stronger bonds, mutual obligations, and shared responsibility, where individuals see themselves as part of a cohesive social unit. Cultures that lean towards individualism tend to stress I over we, promoting a self-driven achievement, whereas collectivist cultures value group harmony and cooperation. Individualism versus collectivism culture is important in change management because it affects how employees interpret and respond to change. In an individualist setting, employees are more likely to embrace change when they see a clear connection to their personal goals and receive recognition for their contribution. This was reflected in a study by Yan et al., which concluded that in individualist societies, people's behavior is more strongly predicted by their personal attitudes. However, in collectivist cultures, are most successful when it supports groups' interests and is introduced through trusted relationships and community leaders. Researchers found that when change initiatives were introduced through trusted relationships and shaped to the benefit of the group, employees in collectivist cultures showed greater identification with the team, higher sense of fairness, and stronger mutual respect. Individualism versus collectivism is important to effective change management, as these cultures' values shape how people perceive and respond to change.
According to Lin and Liu, 2024, the masculinity versus femininity dimension of Hofstede's cultural dimensions is essential in change management as it influences how individuals and groups perceive, react to, and implement change in an organization. There must be a clear understanding of this dimension in order to implement change effectively while aligning with cultural expectations. For example, according to Taras et al. 2023, masculine cultures such as Japan and Germany expect leadership to be dominant, driven by performance, and decisive. Masculine cultures are motivated by success, and communication is direct and goal-oriented. Therefore, Pasla et al. 2022 emphasized that a great understanding of masculine cultures is important in ensuring that change initiatives are focused on career advancement and improvement in performance, using conflict and feedback to encourage change. On the contrary, Minkov and Kassa 2020 described feminine cultures such as Sweden as cultures valuing inclusion in decision-making, empathy, and major concern for their overall well-being. Feminine cultures are motivated by good interpersonal relationships, healthy work-life balance, and consideration and empathy in communication. Thus, Harrison et al. 2021 asserted that understanding of feminine culture is critical in ensuring that change is focused on improving cooperation and well-being of employees. Change initiative decisions must be participative and communicated in a careful and sensitive manner, avoiding conflict and confrontation. Overall, considering a masculine versus feminine culture in change management is crucial, as using a one-size-fits-all approach can lead to disengagement and resistance. Change initiatives must be tailored to suit the cultural values of masculine and feminine cultures. Truly understanding this cultural dimension results in upholding the values of the culture, effective management of resistance, and high support and sustainability of change initiatives.
Power distance describes the extent to which less powerful members of a society accept and expect unequal distribution of power. In high PDI cultures, society tends to accept the decision from the top and may not question their authority. Whereas in low PDI cultures, society tends to expect a more equal consultative approach and feel comfortable challenging their superiors. Interpretation of authority during change. In high PDI contexts, employees typically look to senior leaders for direction and may hesitate to suggest alternatives or criticize plans, unless leaders openly invite their input. Change effort in such a context often need visible support and endorsement from senior leaders, whereas communication from the top carries a particular weight. Farrakhan 2022. In low PDI contexts, people expect to be involved. They appreciate open discussions, workshops, and chances to share their ideas. Senior leaders act more as a facilitator, which foster engagement, where employees expect and appreciate opportunities to discuss and shape change. Implications for change management. If an organization has a high PDI, senior leaders have to clearly explain why change matters and what it involves. This can be done by using formal channels such as town hall meetings led by executives. When testing new processes, respected authority figures are to be involved for endorsement or sign-off. Leaders are to be encouraged to model the new behavior. Once senior leaders are seen adopting this behavior, others would follow. For example, in serial loans banking sector, studies found that top executives use transformational leadership, which is inspiring vision from authority,
and transactional leadership, which is clear structure and guidance. Employees were more receptive to change. Kiba et al. 2023. If an organization has low PDI, forums are to be created where anyone can contribute their ideas. This can be done by setting up cross-level teams for problem solving, empowering middle managers and frontline staff to try improvements and share results. Use open feedback sessions where leaders can act as coach or facilitators rather than sole decision makers. For example, in Nordic countries, approaches that involve staff in planning and decision making tends to get buy-in.
Indulgence versus restraint measures how freely people in a culture pursue gratification and enjoyment. Indulgent cultures like the US or Mexico value freedom, happiness, and leisure, while restrained cultures like China or Russia emphasize duty, control, and discipline. So, how does this affect organizational change? In indulgent cultures, people are more open to change, especially if it brings personal benefit, flexibility, or fun. In restrained cultures, people are more cautious. They prefer structure, clear rules, and stability. For leaders, this means your approach must adapt. You must use optimistic and open communication in indulgent cultures. While in restrained cultures, you may go with formal structured messaging or provide a solid reason for change. The key takeaway from all this is that culture matters, and that a change strategy that works in one country might fail in another just because of cultural values.
Let us now explore uncertainty avoidance, one of Husfield's most influential cultural dimensions. It refers to how comfortable people are with ambiguity and risk. In high uncertainty avoidance cultures like many in the Caribbean, people prefer order, structure, and predictability. Change that is unclear or rushed often leads to anxiety and resistance. This is particularly relevant to change management, where uncertainty is inevitable. As highlighted in Unit 8 of this course, if leaders ignore cultural preferences for structure and clarity, even necessary changes may fail. A strong example comes from Barbados, where a public sector reform effort, the SmartGov initiative, struggled due to poor change communication and unclear expectations. Employees reported confusion, fear of job loss, and lack of training. As Filkey noted, the absence of a structured transition plan created a climate of uncertainty that undermined employee morale. This failure was not due to the technology, it was due to how the change was introduced in a high uncertainty avoidance cultural setting. And that is exactly why culture is so important in managing change. When culture is ignored, people feel unsafe and they resist. When culture is respected, change is much more likely to succeed. In contrast, low uncertainty avoidance cultures like Singapore embrace flexibility and experimentation. They do not need as much structure to adapt. Gong and others 2024. So to conclude, uncertainty avoidance shows that culture shapes how people feel about and respond to change. And if we do not manage change in ways that align with that culture, we set ourselves up for resistance, failure, or even backlash.
Culture is a key factor in how people respond to change. Through Hofstede's framework, we've shown that change must align with cultural values to reduce resistance and increase support. Effective change management isn't just strategic, it must be culturally informed to succeed.